The East India Company, a name that echoes through history. It is a story of ambition, greed, and power. This was no ordinary company. It was a trading behemoth. It reshaped the destiny of nations. Formed in 1600, the East India Company was granted a royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I. This charter gave them a monopoly over English trade with the East Indies. What began as a quest for spices transformed into a vast empire. The company's influence stretched from the Persian Gulf to the South China Sea. They traded in silk, tea, and porcelain. But their ambitions went beyond commerce. They became a military force. They engaged in diplomacy. They even minted their own coins. The East India Company's story is a complex one. It is a tale of both progress and exploitation. Their actions had profound and lasting consequences. This is the story of how a trading company built an empire. The dawn of the 17th century was an age of exploration. European powers sought new routes to the east. The lure of spices, silks, and riches drove them onward. In England, a group of merchants saw an opportunity. They formed the East India Company. On December 31, 1600, Queen Elizabeth I granted the company a royal charter. This powerful document gave them a monopoly over English trade with the East Indies. They could establish trading posts. They could raise armies. They could even wage war. The company's early voyages were fraught with danger. Storms, disease, and piracy were constant threats. Yet the promise of profit spurred them on. They established their first trading post in Surat, India, in 1608. This marked the beginning of their long and tumultuous relationship with the subcontinent. These early voyages were about more than just trade. The company's agents were explorers, diplomats, and adventurers. They forged alliances with local rulers. They learned about new cultures, and they laid the foundation for the empire that was to come. The East India Company's initial focus was trade. They sought spices like pepper, cloves, and nutmeg. These were highly prized in Europe. But as the company grew, so did its ambitions. They began to assert their military might. The Mughal Empire ruled over much of India at the time, but the Mughal Empire was in decline. The East India Company exploited this weakness. They intervened in local conflicts, they built forts, and they raised armies made up of Indian soldiers called sepoys. One pivotal battle took place in 1757 at Plassey. The company's forces, led by Robert Clive, defeated the Nawab of Bengal. This victory gave the company control over Bengal. It was a turning point. The East India Company was no longer just a trading company. They were a major power in India. The company's growing influence brought them into conflict with other European powers. They fought the Portuguese, the Dutch, and the French for control of trade routes and territories. These conflicts shaped the balance of power in Asia. Section 4. The Empire Takes Shape. From Merchants to Rulers. The victory at Plassey marked a turning point. The East India Company was no longer just a trading power. They were becoming rulers of a vast domain. They collected taxes. They administered justice. They even minted their own coins. The company's rule was not without its critics. They were accused of corruption and exploitation, but they also implemented some reforms. They abolished the practice of sati, the ritual burning of widows. They invested in infrastructure projects like canals and roads. The company's expansion continued throughout the late 18th and early 19th centuries. They fought a series of wars against the Marathas, the Sikhs, and other Indian rulers. By the mid-19th century, the East India Company controlled almost all of India. This vast empire brought great wealth to the company and its shareholders, but it also came at a cost. Millions of Indians were subjected to British rule, and the seeds of resentment were sown. Section 5. The Sepoy Rebellion and its aftermath. The year 1857 saw a major uprising against the East India Company's rule. It began with a mutiny among the sepoys. These Indian soldiers in the company's army rebelled against their British officers. The rebellion spread like wildfire. It engulfed large parts of north and central India. The rebels, united by their hatred of British rule, fought fiercely. The fighting was brutal on both sides. The British were caught off guard by the scale and intensity of the rebellion, but they eventually crushed the uprising. The rebellion had profound consequences. It shook the foundations of the East India Company's rule. The British government, horrified by the violence and instability, decided to take direct control of India. The East India Company's days were numbered. Section 6. The sun sets on the Company Raj. The Sepoy Rebellion of 1857 had shaken the East India Company to its core. It exposed the fragility of their rule. It also led to a major shift in British policy. The British government decided to dissolve the East India Company. They assumed direct control over India. In 1858, Queen Victoria issued a proclamation. India became a part of the British Empire. The East India Company's reign was over. Their assets were liquidated. Their armies were disbanded. They faded into the annals of history. The company's legacy, however, lived on. They had left an indelible mark on India. Their actions had reshaped the subcontinent's political, economic, and social landscape. Section 7. Conclusion. A legacy of trade, exploitation, and transformation. The East India Company. A name that evokes a bygone era. They were traders, conquerors, and administrators. They amassed immense wealth. They left a trail of controversy. The company's story is one of ambition, greed, and the relentless pursuit of profit. Their actions had a profound impact on the world. They reshaped global trade networks. They fueled the Industrial Revolution. They contributed to the rise of British imperialism. But their legacy is complex. They were ruthless in their pursuit of profit. They exploited India's resources. They left a legacy of poverty and underdevelopment. The East India Company's story is a reminder of the transformative power of commerce. It is also a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked corporate power. Their rise and fall offer valuable lessons for our own time.